Everyone, welcome to the 9 a.m. Kathy, I know, appreciate you coming in. I know you're fighting a little bit today. Yeah. Sure.
And Kelly, while you're at it, could you promote me?
She's going to promote you right out the door on January 1st.
She's looking forward to that.
Good morning, Kathy Funkbaxter, Finance Director. For this budget hearing, we are going to be in your notebooks on tab. We're going to be on tab 11, which is personnel request. So we'll start off with our juvenile detention. So George, if you want to join me in case there's any questions. So there are two new positions being requested for lead detention officer. The amount in our worksheet is the salary as well as the associated benefits for these two positions. And then also for juvenile probation, there were two positions that we've now inactivated based upon the department's request. And that is a juvenile care coordinator and an administrative assistant 2, which that as well shows the salary and the associated benefits. The total for the new positions with benefits is $184,415. The total for the two positions being inactivated is $183,770. Do you have any questions about the juvenile request, juvenile detention?
So we're eliminating 2 and calling them something else. So it's not really more bodies. We're just shuffling titles or responsibility.
Good morning, commissioners and the public. George Moya, Court Services Manager. That's no longer the case. Court Administrator for Juvenile. The way I see it, commissioners, is we tend to see juvenile detention as one department, juvenile probation as another department. I see it, I've always seen it more of 2 gears of the same system, juvenile services as a whole. So as we're looking into what our needs are, we're finding that the needs are more important in our detention facility with coverage of supervisors. We have a lack and shortage of supervisors for certain shifts, and that creates pretty much a domino effect of a lot of issues that we're encountering, such as forced overtime for certain individuals that are qualified as officers in charge or leads, have potential for that supervision and have had enough time on the job to know the job well enough and have gone through the OIC training to be able to do that. I'm not sure if I had mentioned the rise in our overtime expenditures is astronomical. If you don't mind, I have a sheet that I can bring up to you that kind of highlights a little bit more details, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
So as I'm identifying those needs within the system, we also recognize that we can do without in certain areas, especially our probationary side of things. We've done some reorganization, and that reorganization has led to better ways of processing cases, filling in shifts in our detention and our probation office side of things. based on that, we realized that those positions aren't needed as much. We are doing without. And we'd rather sacrifice those positions and not fill those just to fill those positions. You know, we're trying to be responsive also to the general fund budget. And so as we're identifying these needs, the biggest needs for us is our detention. And those have, like I said, a ripple effect. Those two positions in detention are greatly needed. We're severely understaffed in terms of the supervisory portions of it. Right now, we're kind of dealing with the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission that has a backlog. Some of our officers have been taking at least a year to a year and a half to go through the academy. So we may hire an individual, they won't be able to go to the academy until about a year or a year and a half. RCW states that they need to complete their academy within 6 months of employment. The caveat there that the training commission also sees the RCW, and there's language in the RCW that says unless extended by the commission. And so at this point, there's such a huge backlog in the academies portion of it, specifically for juvenile sections, that there's a massive backlog. And with that has consequences to our facility. I mean, we're a 24/7 facility, and we have to operate no matter what.
So with this changing their duties, they'll put in places where you're having excess overtime right now. So these figures on the bottom, this 254,000, 107,000, are you telling me that goes away with this change, or are you telling me that's greatly reduced?
It's greatly reduced in my opinion. Yes, what you see in the section there, our current overtime for detention expenses, and Kathy can elaborate a little bit more, reached 254,000. And that's the ripple effect for these supervisory positions. And if we're doing the math, 2 new positions at 184, to me, there's a huge savings there. And again, the ripple effect is that only certain individuals can be forced onto these positions. And if I'm one of those individuals that I'm already at step 7, because I've been with the facility at least 7 years, I'm at step 7, I have the highest salary, and my overtime is time and a half at step 7. So there's massive implications in terms of the expenditures for overtime.
This last budget amendment we did for 2024, we had to increase the overtime budget. And fortunately, because of the vacancies, we were able to decrease direct labor as a one-time reduction. But they have been seeing some really large, for the last couple of years, overtime budgets, expenditures.
So it looks to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the top 2 are just a wash. We're just position changes. So we're not
Correct.
adding anything, we're not subtracting anything.
Correct.
But the bottom, because we've changed these people to fill in places where we're incurring overtime now, that the actual budget should go down,
Yes,
is our expectations,
Yes.
that's correct.
at least in payroll.
Yes.
So I understand the thinking behind the shift and the cost savings. How do we explain to the public that we're taking folks who look after about a dozen kids and take away jobs for the probationary program, which has 130, somewhere around there, right?
For probation youth?
For, the juvenile probation. Doesn't that have healthy numbers?
Yes, and that's hard to say because we have a different few numbers running. So meaning I can look at the number of cases being filed in a year, the number of youth that actually go to probation based on the cases that go to court. Not all court cases will end in probation. And then there's the cases that go to our diversion unit. So those cases are being diverted from the justice system into just a diversion prevention type service. So there's a lot of numbers that go with that. So if I accumulate all those numbers, we're probably about 900 cases
Mhm.
at the probation side of things. What has changed for us is, and you may recall, when our Superior Court County Clerk took back some of the clerk positions from juvenile and had them under her wing, rightfully so, they're her record. That forced us to look at, okay, well, the 3 positions that we normally have, which is one of them here, the administrative assistant 3, those were the positions that we were using to fill court dockets. And that need is no longer there for us to fill those dockets. So when you look at it in those terms, that the duties have changed a little bit. So we had to make some adjustments. And based on those adjustments, we realized we don't need another full-time admin 3 position, because the major bulk load of that work for that person may have been dockets.
And of course, the other rule to always mention is the state makes the rules. And one of those rules is we have to operate 24/7, regardless of the number of kids. We built the facility years ago. It has to be staffed. We don't have much flexibility on that.
You're right,
We
Commissioner.
either hire more staff or we pay massive amounts of overtime, which in the long run is not healthy practices. So.
Yes, and to add to your point, legislature will make mandates, new laws that we have to respond to, and sometimes they're unfunded mandates, so we bear the brunt of that. So
And-
what we're trying to do
And
is be.
certainly not funding the training commission adequately so they can process the workers is another one of those unfunded mandates. We have to spend more money to compensate for that as
100.
well.
100% agree. We're making, well, when I say we, administrators, juvenile administrators at the state level, through our association, we're trying to make legislative changes to our legislature to change that, to adequately fund the juvenile services side of the academy.
My other suggestion is, can we take $180,000 out of the overtime? Since we're not going to need it. We've hired people full-time.
We may, and I think that will be a discussion with Kathy OFM and figure out the numbers. We also have our extra help expense, which is really the expenses for part-timers that fill in certain roles. But, you know, and we've had, if we look at the numbers, the shortage, if you look at the expense for extra help, 107,000, well, that would be indicative of saying, well, part-timers are not pulling in their share. Well, yes and no. That part of it is yes, they may not be picking up shifts, but certain shifts are not for them because they're not supervisors. They're only part-time and they don't have the experience or the training to be in those positions. And that's why we're seeing the massive overtime expenditure.
But of course, I was referring to the overtime pay, not the extra help pay.
Right.
There should probably be some reflection of adjustment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the
Not
hope.
necessarily the whole amount, because there is a certain amount of uncertainty. You don't know how many people are going to be sick
Right.
in the course of a year. So I understand the need for some flexibility on that, but
Right.
I would look forward to just some additional adjustment on the overtime.
Yeah, if I was making a request to leave our overtime expense at 250 or 260,000, I think that would be not putting in the effort to fix the issues, the root problems.
Thanks.
George, I have a lot of questions. Do I understand that this is just a reclassification, or you're asking to add 2 new people?
Two new staff, 2 new FTEs, yes.
Okay, and I am a little surprised at that because it seems like you're proposing it comes at the expense of probation. And you just outlined how complex and expansive probation is. So I would think that surprises me. Okay, then that leads into your argument. Has a couple of elements in it at least. One particular argument is that it'll be a cost savings across those 2 entities that you supervise. Will you stand behind that? Too often I get proposed this, and then the next year it's, well, we're short here. And by the way, overtime is still climbing. So I really would want a firm statement on your part that you will hold the overtime budget down to some number, which I hope you'll offer me now.
Yeah.
And we'll say, yes, that is a cost savings then. Then the other issue is one that you just addressed. That's your costs have gone down because they were shifted into the clerk's office. And I'd want to see all of that reflected in here. And okay. Then, according to the National Institute, I'm a lot less interested in stuff like that because they will tell you whatever it is they feel is convenient at the moment. Only you know the ground truth. Are we doing a good job or are we doing a bad job? And it's up to you to help us fix that. Just for a sidebar, if you look at the National Employee Review kinds of things, or you look at studies about productivity or job performance, they vary between one person and another. I don't know, factors of 5. In the development world, it's factors of 20. So we're dealing here with numbers where a factor of 2 makes a big difference. And yet I know in the system, there could be factors of 5. So I don't find that argument as as a compelling argument compared to your argument that says, I'm not doing a good job now because you've got my hands tied.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, we can totally rely on national standards. We can rely on what we can check our temperature, you know, in-house. And in that temperature, I can just give you one example of a few where we really feel it. And one of is that we have a detention manager. He's here with us today. We also have an assistant detention manager who's mainly in charge of programming, but they normally have a Monday through Friday schedule. And they have worked numerous, and I mean numerous, Saturdays and Sundays, just so that they can fill shifts on the weekend for supervisors in order for that supervisory position to be filled. So they are making the ultimate sacrifice. As managers, they're rolling up their sleeves and they're getting right back to work. And they're taking over on Saturdays, some Sundays, and some holidays, because we find ourselves short and we find ourselves short. Now, the intention is not to have our managers or my managers be there on a weekend and then offset their time off on a Monday or Tuesday when most of our operations are there.
Yeah, no, I understand. I often try to avoid too much detailed arguments because you're not guaranteeing anything there.
Right.
In the aggregate, though, in your section, what problems, issues are we trying to fix or address? Certainly, there's reduce force overtime and reduce overtime expenditure. So I really do want a number from you that says, I will stay within these bounds. And I haven't heard that.
That's my commitment to you here. And this is why we're trying to resolve the issue. And I think this is the potential solution to that issue. And I'm standing firm on this will lead to a reduction in overtime expenditures. And if we were busting at the seams at probation where I wouldn't feel comfortable, I wouldn't be making the request at the bottom either. But I'm comfortable that we can squeeze enough work into people without it, you know, being too problematic.
Before I can support this, I want to see some numbers in the commitment. How far down will overtime be, and your personal commitment that you will stay within that bound. You know what's happened in the city of Longview, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we will know
want to
within the
avoid
first.
that.
Yes, and we'll know within the first quarter, you know, if we're making an impact or not. And that's certainly something that we can come back and say, where are we with these numbers? Are we achieving what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, but by then we will have, I mean, I don't bring employees on
Right.
without thinking that that's a long-term commitment we have to the employee. And I can't say, well, we bring them on, but at the end of the first quarter, if they're innocent, we'll still let them go. That's just bad management.
Right.
Mhm.
Anything else?
I'll get you the overtime numbers that we put for we did amend the overtime numbers for 2025. And right now at 2024, we're expecting to be at 340,000 in overtime. But I know that for 2025, those numbers are like 200.
Correct.
I'll get you the exact number. Okay. Can I introduce?
Thank you, George.
Can I quickly introduce our new finance manager? Take the opportunity to introduce our new finance manager. Have her come up real quick before we continue on.
Sure.
I meant to do it right before we started. She started last week, and Suzette Moon has joined us as our finance manager. She previously was with the state auditor's office, and we're happy to have her, and I'll just let her, if there's any questions you have for her, she's here this morning.
Good morning.
Lesson number one, got to bring it up closer.
Yeah, you have to bring
Oh.
it close.
Good morning. Thank you.
Go ahead and pull that microphone up. There you go.
Well, I, for one, I'm happy to have you on board.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, welcome aboard. I don't know that I have any questions for you. I'm sure we'll have questions down the road at times, but
Of course, we always accept answers if they're voluntary to questions we're too stupid to ask.
perfect.
Okay, thank
We're
you
glad
so
to have
much.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
Tanya just handed me the budget. The budget for overtime for juvenile detention for next year is an even 200,000. And like I said, right now at 2024, we're expecting 340,000. So that's the number that they're committing to.
So they're looking at a roughly
still short.
140,000 decrease.
Over what we're expecting for 2024, yes.
Yeah,
For the juvenile system, is the overtime going to change if all of a sudden, instead of 10 to 12 people in the system, if all of a sudden you have 30? Is that going to affect the budget?
I would guess it probably would.
Absolutely.
So-
One would expect that. That's one of the reasons we said is we don't expect hard numbers. We got to have numbers that go in the budget. But we review the budget all the time to make sure we don't.
So the numbers we're basing this on is 12 or less? For basically,
Well-
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he's come up with.
I don't know if it's a 24/7 facility, so you operate it whether you have 12 in there or you have 50 in there, right? You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
you're right,
Correct.
but if you have 50 in there, do you suddenly need more personnel on hand?
The answer is
That-
yes, because there's a safety issue if there isn't anything else. But we're not Neanderthal as a board. When a department presents a situation where, well, the baseline was 12 and we now have 25, can you help us? I mean, I can't imagine we'd say no.
I understand. I was just wondering
Yeah, no,
how
it's a good
easily this
question.
might go in a ditch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the thing I am really interested in general is for actual commitments. It's too easy to say something and then later on, we forget about it, it wanders, and particularly there'll be a new board coming on, new attitudes. I like to have buy-in from the department, said, yes, I stand behind what I say.
Okay, and continuing on that same sheet, just for your information, I wanted to put out there that that for the clerk's office, we have two positions that we're inactivating because they were just temporaries through this December 31st, 2024. And so those two positions have been removed from the budget. We also.
Was that related to the Blake decision where we bulked up staff in
No,
order to
this was-
process a lot of?
Yeah, this was related to a request that had come in like in 2021 or for extra help in utilizing ARPA funds. I think this was to help with the scanning and getting their records digitized. So those two positions were approved through December 31st, 2024, and they're going to go away.
Thank you.
Offender services, this is a position we're inactivating due to a restructure. And this is a position that at this point we have removed from the budget as well. I think this has to do with the restructure of where probation moved over to district court, and this individual was partly supervising those personnel, so. And then LT1, this is a position that we had in the budget and has now been removed. This is a project manager position.
Question, what's the meaning of inactivate?
Inactivate until you approve us to delete it. We're calling it inactivate on our side. So then once you approve it, we'll actually go in and delete the position.
Okay, so it's a delete.
Yes, it's a delete. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was my question, especially if we're hired for a temporary thing, why aren't we just deleting them? But
Yeah.
got it.
Are you setting aside additional money for the LT1 project? I
Yes.
mean, I think our intent is to contract that out, but
Yeah,
that money
so-
has to be,
So for the LT1, we had looked at completely deleting that whole department, but we didn't. We left it intact and we reduced all the personnel expenses, and we have professional contracted services instead in that budget for $100,000.
so for those who might not be aware, the acronym refers to a dredge spoil storage site at the end of Tootle Park Road. It's the big sandy area surrounding the shooting range. But down at the water's level, the Tootle River is cutting away at the bank and is creating a real mess. The whole bank is very unstable. And so the long-term plan that we have been developing is to approach some strategies to stabilize those banks. It may involve some channel redirection, some dredging, and some expenses that are involved. And we're working with the Department of Ecology, as well as potentially the Corps of Engineers. So there's some major stuff going on. In fact, we are concerned about losing a road because of that erosion at this time. So anticipating some additional expenses on that. Thank you.
So going back to inactivate, on juvenile probation, does that mean that people will be asked to leave, or those are just placeholders that we no longer will keep?
Yeah, On the juvenile probation, those positions are vacant already. On the clerk, I believe what Stacy's been doing is, as she has a vacancy and if she wants to move positions around, I believe both of those are in vacant right now as well. And then offender services, that position's vacant. So there isn't, from what I know, for all of those, there isn't anyone currently in those positions. They're vacant at this point in time.
So I'm trying to rationalize a bottom line, the bottom grayed out line. It says we are actually adding 2 new people onto the county staff in
Yeah.
this narrow examination.
Yeah, that's just for the new positions.
And the 184 is not correct in the sense that we haven't balanced out the gains from reducing overtime. Okay. So for a budget standpoint, I expect our staff to go up. If nothing else changed, I'd expect our county staff to go up by a count of 2. And I would not expect our cost to go up by $184,000.
Right, in an overall picture, you're correct. And there I was just trying to emphasize those new positions that you would be approving.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
Right,
I took it to mean the stuff in the red was in our 2024 budget, but it won't be in our 2025.
right, correct. It won't be in our 2025 budget.
So what Arn is saying is correct. 2025 is going to show 184, but it's not going to show 292, 300 plus or whatever.
Right, right, correct. Okay, the noxious weed has a request for adding a 9-month position. It's on the second page of your personnel. And Jennifer is here to answer any questions for this noxious weed specialist.
Did you bring us any samples?
I did not bring samples today. I apologize. Jennifer Mendoza, Noxious Weeds Coordinator. We are requesting an addition of a 9-month seasonal position. Our current situation is during the summer months, we hire a small team of seasonal field members who carry out work primarily with our Mount St. Helens grant, but also our Knotweed grant, sometimes our Class A work. And we are having trouble finding individuals who can pass our pesticide examination and obtain their license. In addition to that, we find that having a returning crew member has been very beneficial. We've been lucky enough to have somebody return most of the years that we've been doing this project from the year prior, and that institutional knowledge really helps make the projects more effective per that year. So what we're looking to do is reduce the number of summer field technicians that we hire for about 4 to 5 months, and instead hire a 9-month person who would be on our staff and ideally would return each year, being able to carry out the same projects annually. And this person would lead maybe 1 or 2 seasonal field technicians instead of hiring everybody at a seasonal 4 to 5 month position, hopefully making this project more effective. So the majority of this person's expenses would be reimbursed through grant funds. They would be on a little bit longer than our grant projects typically run. So our program would have a person available to some of our agency partners who may be struggling with the same licensing requirements, who may not be as well identified or educated with the identification of weeds, especially early in the season. March, April, and May are really great times to treat weeds for our public lands, but a lot of people forget about that and they wait until it's flowering. So we're hoping to build some connections with this position as well, making it available to our public agencies to partner there.
Go ahead.
An interesting thing about this is that you have a job that won't ever end. And we get a lot of questions, but about progress, and maybe you could address quickly what this new position would do in terms of actual material progress.
So with a person who is licensed and able to return to these projects year after year, we don't have to take our inspectors away from their normal inspecting job as often to carry out these projects, which in the month of September, because of our licensing issue, our inspectors had to be out on our projects every day. We sent out very few inspection letters then. So we're hoping to keep our inspectors more focused and continue the progress working with private landowners outside of our grant areas. And then also when you have a returning person coming to these projects every year, that person remembers all the details of where maybe a small population would have been that didn't get marked on a map or things like that. So having that returning knowledge will help to make the projects far more effective.
Are you, with the current staff, are you unable to take advantage of all the customers? And I call them customers because at the moment I'm trying to tie them to grants. It strikes me that because this is actually a productive endeavor to remove noxious weeds, that there may be agencies out there who would like your expertise, but you don't have the staff. Are we there?
I think so. There's a lot of noxious weeds out there, and we are not able to get to everything every year.
Of course, but are there people who are willing to pay for the extrication?
I have made contact with one agency who was very interested in this concept, and I was going to reach out to the others after we have the position approved.
And how are you doing on the budget?
With the budget, this position should run about $52,000 per year. And I think about 2/3 of that or more should be reimbursed through grant funds. So some of those grant incomes are reflected in our budget and some are committed annually at a time that doesn't allow us to commit them in our budget. For example, our knotweed funding typically comes in July right before. So right now it does not look like we have knotweed funding for next year, but it should come in before the knotweed season. So with all of the anticipated grant fundings that we have outside of the budget, in addition to what's in the budget, I think the program expenses would be roughly $20,000. And I think that we have the ability to cover that.
And then tell me, what is our commitment to the employee? Are we guaranteeing them a job the next year?
Yes, that would be the idea. So
We
they would be on
guarantee them?
they would be on a furlough for the 9 months or for the 3 months in between field seasons.
But we have a legal obligation or a moral obligation to hire them again the next year if we're out of money?
I'm not sure how that would work if we were out of money per se. Do you have any input on that or?
No, I don't. That would be an HR situation if you had a request for reduction in force.
So Jennifer, the position would be permanent year in and year out. But
Yes,
the person you hire doesn't have tenure right off the bat. I mean, he doesn't have a guaranteed contract down into the future.
I think that's how it would work.
Yeah, I mean, we're just dealing with the position right now, not the individual.
Yes.
So it would depend on appropriate collective bargaining policies. I think they're just policies rather than a contract. So the other question that I had is, and Mr. Mortensen alluded to your budget status. The majority of your funds come from assessment on properties all throughout the county.
Correct.
Are you anticipating coming to us and asking a request for an increase in the assessment? Is that coming down the line or?
At this time, no, possibly in the future. We'd like to see how this plays out within our overall budget. I think in the future, any increase in assessments would be more related to overall cost rising rather than this specific position.
Last time it was raised was about 3-4 years ago.
I think 2 to 3 years ago, yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. Okay.
But before that, it was a lot longer too. Also, I would only advise that it's very difficult for the public to swallow a huge increase at any one time.
Right.
But as long as we have a job to do called eliminating noxious weeds, there's a cost, and that cost will go up annually just without changing anything.
Right.
So I would look to an analysis that says every 2 years we will increase, or so, depending on the CPI or some such thing.
Right. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and now we have the last position that we have on the personnel list is for an engineering tech 3 for survey purposes. New position, grand total with all-inclusive with all benefits is $101,587,000.
Are we not able to clone Paul?
We've tried. Good morning, Commissioners, members of the public, Savannah Clement, Public Works. So today we are requesting an Engineer Tech 3 position in our survey team. Currently, our survey team consists of 3 folks. That includes Paul, and then we have a PLS surveyor, so a licensed surveyor, and then we have our tech position that's under that position. Normally, we have a 2-person crew that does not include Paul. Paul stays back at the office, and they go out in the field and conduct survey work. And about 5 years ago, one of our surveyors did get their license, which meant that they can work more in the office to assist Paul in development review and he can go into their other tasks. So that only left us with 1 field person. The nature of our surveyor team has increased as far as their work. We've opened up a lot of customer service components and public service in that team that we didn't do previously. For example, Paul and I were discussing it this morning. About 10 years ago when Paul started, the position actually didn't do development review at that time. They didn't do right-of-way requests from the public and other departments. And then also GIS was not done previously, about a decade ago. And then also, if you're looking at our project increase over the last decade, just since I've been at Public Works in 8 years, I think we've gone to maybe from 1 to 2 projects a year, and then we're scheduled for 6 to 8 next year. If that just tells you our increase in work. I probably have a more naive view than our engineering team, but to me, just high level, the buildable lots in Cowlitz County are changing, right? All of the good flat land that's easy to build on is decreasing. So we're given more complex development review projects, and also our projects that we're doing, scheduled projects for large construction are also more complex and require a lot more survey. So that's kind of just my overview of the need for the position. We have tried to compensate with the workload by hiring temporary help. So we have temporary help here for a couple of years. We haven't done that. We've also had a consultant here a couple of years ago to assist in the needs. And then we have summer help every year, and we've tried to double our summer help in survey. For the last 3 years, we've tried to get you 2, but we've only actually been successful this last summer in getting Paul to summer help to assist our field crew. So those are kind of some of the approaches we've taken. But if you have more specific questions, I'll stop talking and let you go.
So one question, do these positions include a company car?
No, we have a survey van that they share amongst themselves that has all the equipment that they would need to utilize.
And the way you described the job, it's not road related. So this is a general fund
It's
funded?
100% roads.
It is 100%.
It is 100% roads. So
But they're reviewing private developments.
that is a component of the work. But a lot of our, maybe I should let Paul answer this. Just make sure you turn it on and get close.
Oh, turn.
Right here.
The button
yep.
needs to,
There
yeah.
you go.
The green light's on.
Yeah.
And go ahead and pull that a little bit closer to you. There we go.
How about that? Good morning. Yeah, so the development review section that Savannah was talking about, that's really me. And so again, when I first started, we weren't doing any development review, or at least I wasn't doing any development review. So I was able to focus directly on the work that, we were doing for engineering and public works in general. And now that's taking up some of my time. Well, obviously when that time gets used, other things need to be taken up by somebody else. And what we've been doing is, again, we've been trying to think outside the box the last 10 years, try to get as much efficiency as we can. We've gotten additional equipment. Every time we buy something new, we try to make sure that it's operational in the field by one person, right? It doesn't require both people, so that one person can go. So then we can take an untrained person, like in summer help or somebody like that, send them with them, and then they can watch for traffic, carry stuff, drive the vehicle, and then that one person can do the actual survey work. And then our surveyors, we're also in the process of training them how to do some of the office functions, right? So I can focus more on some of the other things that, we just weren't doing before. We're also working with other departments more than we ever did in the past. I think it's been beneficial because, we help them out on things, they help us out on things. It's really nice to have a county family that we all do similar things, but in a different way. So, working with the auditor's office and assessor's office and GIS folks, and but that, that has taken time to kind of build those relationships. And again, it does take time where I can't be there on the AutoCAD to draft the map as much as I was before.
So, question for you. I often understand best if I have an example, and the Cloverdale repair work, that involved all kinds of stuff. Can you tell me what?
So he's referring to the South Cloverdale project moving
Uh-huh.
forward. Maybe you could articulate some of the needs that would be required from survey right away.
Oh, on that, so working with our right-of-way department to create legal descriptions, exhibits for negotiations, things like that. So we do the topographic survey in the beginning so that our engineers can design, so they can
And
see
I'm
what's
looking
out there.
specifically to what this new person would do
Oh.
in the short run, you might say.
So this new person would do all of those things. Again, this would just allow us, to do more of it. And as I'm doing the other things,
You're using a
okay.
few too many pronouns for me.
All right.
Those and things.
Sorry,
Yeah.
So this person would be in the field, is that correct, Paul? They would,
this is a field position.
correct. So
Yes, and so we end up with 3 field people who, the 2 that we have currently also we've been training them with some office skills so they can do little pieces and parts that I would normally be doing. But because I'm doing some of these other things, I can't get to as quickly as before. But it would be a field person. They would be doing field work, working with our equipment. They'd be in the van, doing that kind of
Okay,
stuff.
and then looking forward to when, assuming that they learn everything they need to learn to move up, do we have a position that we're expecting them to move into?
It's not a position that's currently established or created. We are fortunate to have two licensed surveyors, Paul and Chad. And Chad's position, when he got licensed about 5 years ago, I could be wrong, the board at that time did approve a salary reclass for his position to keep him here and keep him maintaining that certification for us. It's very beneficial. It's very hard off the street to recruit a licensed surveyor that, at least in the last 5 years that I can speak for. So in saying that, yes, it's possible. The position doesn't currently exist as we have it in our budget. But if this person would be able to, get their, I don't know, it requires years of service, certifications and training. So it would be possible in the future for this position and our current field position to obtain possibly a different classification. It just doesn't exist right now.
Okay, thank you.
It would seem logical with the number of increased projects that you've been working on, that we've praised the department for in the past, that you're going to have a reflection of the need for more of this type of work being done. So the other thing is what I asked earlier, clarify that it was funded out of the road fund rather than, because we're always trying to protect the general fund that goes towards 63% going to law and justice issues. So,
Right.
Thank you for that.
So if we get a project today under the crew we have now, what's the time frame from start to finish to get that done?
Good question.
Depending on the size, probably at this point, probably 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months?
Yeah.
With this other person, what's the time frame?
I'm hoping we'll get that down to a couple, 3 months. There's obviously there's a lot of office work involved with the field work as well and oversight and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that we can, cut that significantly from where it is now.
So Paul, what you said was 3 to 4 months. And then what Commissioner Dahl, I think, is saying, future state, assuming everyone's trained up and ready to go, you're anticipating still 3 months? Or are you saying you could cut 3 to 4 months in half?
Yeah, I'm hoping to cut that in half.
Okay.
Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
Is that the proper use of hoping, or did you mean expecting? I mean, is it a
No,
long
that's, yeah.
shot, or
Yeah.
is it?
That's what I'm expecting.
Okay.
We always get things coming in the survey
All other things
department.
being equal is
Yeah,
is the
all
question.
things being equal, yes, that's what I'm expecting.
What's the time frame for like an outside firm?
So using a consultant?
Yeah.
I'll let Paul answer that.
It depends on what we're asking them to do. Normally, when we bring in a consultant, we don't ask them to do the same work that we do. Most consultants don't get the same level of research that we do. We had consultants come in, and typically they'll give us something in, I'd say, a survey work, probably about 2 months is usually when we get things. We've been exploring with drones and other stuff like that to get certain pieces of the work, but probably a couple of months.
What I don't want to do is go backwards. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So in keeping with the earlier discussion about offsetting savings, this would translate into fewer temporary contracts?
Ultimately, I anticipate us still using summer help, just, to be transparent. It's good labor at a low rate. It gives oftentimes young people, the opportunity to learn a new skill. I anticipate we'll continue to try to use summer help where we can. I don't see that there would be a need for temporary help or consultant work based off of the consultants we've had since I've been at Public Works. to fill that need for survey. Did I not answer your question? I thought it was, will it get rid
Having
of?
trouble computing.
Okay,
It sounded earlier that you said you had filled in with contracts.
we tried to do that, yes.
And so I'm asking, how much have you spent this year on
Oh,
contracts and the year before?
I'm
So-
sorry. Okay. I didn't bring our, we haven't had a survey consultant. We didn't have super great experiences, luck, or cost savings using consultants. So we have tried that and we have not continued with that because it was not cost effective and we didn't find value. So Paul mentioned the research level wasn't where we would have liked it for what we were paying. And we had used the contract so quickly in such a short period of time that we did not pursue trying to renegotiate a second contract. So.
Great answer.
Okay. Anything else?
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And just
you.
welcome our new finance manager. We're super happy to have you. We worked with you, state auditor, when you were there at Public Works. So thank you. Yeah, welcome.
That concludes the personnel request that we're presenting. So if I can have permission to proceed with adding these to the budget, then we can do so before we submit our final budget in December, on December 3rd.
At this point, I'm okay, still okay with the suggestions that have been made. No guarantees until the end of the, until the final approval though. 'cause
Right.
Don't know all the requests.
It may be my myopia, but I'm not comfortable with the juvenile detention one. That doesn't mean that it's negative into the indefinite future. It just means I don't quite see that we should embark upon that at this point in time with the uncertainties I see. And commitments to people is pretty important to me. The other ones I think are pretty straightforward.
I think, I'm kind of along that line. I don't know. It's hard for me to envision what that's going to do. I can see in the numbers that it should actually end up in a savings. And I'm hoping it works out down the line.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's my anticipation that it will actually, adding the 2 juvenile detention positions will actually result in savings on our overtime, which has been running, like I said, overtime ran in 2022, almost $258,000. In 23, it ran 323,000. And then this year we're anticipating 340,000. And then under this scenario, they're anticipating dropping it down to 200,000 for 2025. And then in
So-
addition, the other positions in the probation being eliminated.
So based on my experience, there is sometimes a practice of continuing to fund vacant positions because that keeps the budget totals in the departments high. In today's report, you've eliminated 6 vacant positions. So that is, we can actually hold the department a little bit more accountable. We've added 2, so a net loss, I guess, of 2 positions. And these are general fund dollars.
Yes, all of
The other
all of
ones,
those.
the other ones are separately
Special
funded. They're
revenue
not general
funds.
fund
Right.
expenses. I mean, understanding it's all taxpayers' dollars, so ultimately we get that, but I appreciate the fact that you're instituting the kind of discipline that doesn't bulk up the budgets artificially. If they're vacant for a long period of time, you don't need those positions. The positions should go away. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to capitalize on what you said. It's pretty classic in governmentese that to claim, well, I cut the budget by 5%. Well, they cut the budget that had a 10% increase in it by 5%. And that, we've got to get away from those games. And so when I see inactivate, hence my questions, it's like, we're just playing a game. You know, we really should have had on there what we truly believe that it was supposed, that we expected. And I think the board, I mean, we're always cooperative for things that make sense. So it's not like you've got to save the money now because those darn commissioners aren't going to listen to me in the future. And we do the budget amendments fairly frequently.
Yeah, quarterly.
Well, we do it quarterly or as
When
needed.
as
Yeah,
needed.
so it's a misuse of the tool of the budget if we have stuff in there that we know is just a placeholder.
Yeah.
And I would reiterate the thank you for trying to dig that out.
Well, working with the departments, you know, looking at all this, so they
Yeah.
have to, they're helpful in reviewing their personnel items.
Because just so I'm clear, because I heard you say it earlier, this term you're just using until we
Do you,
say
give me
nay or
permission to-
okay on the deal,
Mhm.
and then if we say okay, those become eliminated.
yes,
Those are gone.
those will be gone.
Yeah.
So I would propose that we accept all those inactive and accept also the new positions on page 2, and maybe think about the other 2 positions and let George have the opportunity to come back to us, even if it's tomorrow or the day or next week, and say, how about this? How much time do we have on that?
Well, we still have a few more budget workshops, and so we actually have workshops all the way through the 29th.
Yeah.
So,
So what kind of things do you think would be helpful, like flow chart of what people are working or something like that, or where they're going to fit in, or
Yeah.
if I have them come back, I'd like to
I-
give them some direction of what.
Right, right. No, I'm with you. I do so much instinctively that it's hard for me sometimes to answer that because you present it and then I say, yeah, but you overlooked this because I didn't think of what you were going to do and now I'm responding
yeah.
to it. So.
Well, we've all 3 of us have expressed our concerns. But we've also gotten a commitment from management that they will be reporting back to us on the cost savings that are the result. I don't want us to get into any more details because I don't want to meddle in their management priorities. But so I want to honor their commitments to come back to us.
Would you accept their proposal if there were no cost savings?
No, because we need to
Okay.
show those cost
So-
savings, because then it was all about,
So,
you
so
know,
that's my primary
Yeah.
thing is I want to see more than the soft commitment. I want to hear the words that say, we can live with the new budget with the savings that we have proposed. And now, mind you, the savings I look at there are not going to be the elimination of the inactives or the inactivations. It will be the overtime. And I want that tied specifically to that department, not, I don't know exactly what the current extra help means. It was split into two categories, and I'm not sure why I would do that. If we can get more understanding of that and a commitment that says, if things do not change, that is all things being equal as we stand today, if it were to hold through for the next year, you would, I guarantee you the savings of.
Well, and George can maybe answer this. What I would suggest, or how I would approach that, is I would take a flow chart of what my people are working now and where the overtime comes in. And if I had these two additional, how I fit those in and where those savings are, and you should be able to calculate out a pretty darn good number.
Yeah, I certainly think that's okay.
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in our staff, and I'm always looking for the best employees, not just the one who we might hire that are just passing the time. So I want to feel that there is an exuberance, dedication to getting the best juvenile detention center possible. And it starts with a commitment. Yes, we will live with this.
Yeah. Are we making any sense to you, George?
To some degree. But I just want to stress too that in the cost savings portion of it, not only is there a cost savings to the expenditure drop in the overtime budget, but also in the other two positions. So it is a combination of both, if that makes any sense. So it's not just. So the two positions, the two FTEs on the juvenile probation side of 183, that's gone for 2025. Not only that, there's also a reduction in the detention budget request for 2025. So the accumulation of the 183 and downsizing the budget for overtime expenditures. And not to mention, commissioners, another key point in this is it's operational as well. We have the vacancies that need to be filled. Otherwise, we're going to keep rooting to the same problem.
Yeah, but the vacancy, the inactivation, that's a red herring, almost a specious argument for the justification of the juvenile detention center increase in staffing. Those are, by your own admission, those are two different entities that you look at as a group, but they're two different entities, two different jobs. So combining them doesn't make any sense to me. Now, the overtime, if the overtime is juvenile detention center overtime, which is what I believe you were saying, then that's the item I would chew on and just say, this, you follow what the chairman said.
So yeah, there will be a reduction. With these two positions, there will be a reduction in overtime.
But and there are two elements that are intangible and yet opposite of each other. A lot of overtime is okay today, but after too much overtime, I get all burned out and I don't do as nice a job, and we don't want there. But that was one particular intangible, and the other one, in the exuberance of my own verbosity, I've forgotten it. Sorry.
You expected overtime of 340 this year at the current rate you're going, and you said next year 200. You had to do some calculation to get you to the 200. I think that's kind of where we're going, is what was the calculation that got you there? There has to be, he has to show the, Jim's been putting in 20 hours every week of overtime. That's no longer going to happen because we have this people there, and at the end of the year, it brings it down. So we're only think we're going to be about 200,000. There had to be some calculation. I don't think we just put it in the wind.
I remember it's, a lot of people get into the habit of using income from overtime. And sometimes when you cut overtime down, you make the employee unhappy. Anyhow, that was the other side. And that's something I wouldn't pretend to deal with. That's only yours. But I would suggest that there's nothing evil about having to come back on this and just say, here, you've heard us, we've heard you, and both of us have to chew on it and figure out where we can find the proper communication path.
Yeah, I guess I would need a little bit more guidance to just narrow that down instead of keeping it too general and coming back to almost the same issue that we're running into. And I just want to also reiterate, I mean, we're looking at 2022 numbers, 2023 numbers. So if we're looking at the trends, those numbers aren't lying. These are actuals that we've already expended in overtime. On my note there, year to date, I added the expenditures for this year, 2024. So we're looking at 2022, 2023, and what 2024 looks like as of yesterday. Well, Monday, sorry, Friday. I sure have my detention manager here, and maybe he can elaborate a little bit more on the operational piece to it. So hopefully it makes a little bit more sense in that regard, if you don't mind.
I would really appreciate the time to think about this.
Yeah.
Being repeatedly explained the number isn't going to do anything for me except annoy me.
I recommend we'll bring it back and have some calculations to show you, because we're, with adding 2 FTEs, you're adding at least 4,000 hours approximately on an annual basis. And we can look at how many hours of overtime we've had on an annual basis. We can
Yeah.
do a calculation.
Yeah. I know you know what we're asking
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
Yeah, we can bring it back and I'll assist George in doing that.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
May I, just a brief tiny piece of information on this. So I really appreciate how George has tried to make my request for 2 new additional leads positions fit budget-wise. But my reason for requesting those was operational. I wasn't worried about the budget. I know it's going to have an impact on the overtime. But for a 24/7 post, it takes 4.8 staff to fully fill a 24/7 post. We have 3 supervisor positions, which means that my supervisors are filling 1.8-ish positions with overtime. So a lot of my supervisors are reinforced into 16-hour shifts, which in my opinion brings on liability risk, because that's when mistakes start getting made, when people are working too many shifts too long. So these 2 positions are actually to fill that need, to fill that 24/7 post with supervisors. Right now, we can backfill a little bit with officers in charge. We have a very limited number of those because of the issues with the training academy. And it also doesn't really look good when you intentionally schedule in weekend shifts completely filled with peers, supervising peers. They're not actually supervisors. So that's where my request for these 2 new spots was to fill that operational need for 24/7 supervisor coverage within the detention facility. It will have an impact on the overtime budget because that 1.8 will no longer be being filled by supervisors at supervisor rates. It'll be at straight time for those supervisors in those posts. So that's more was why I requested them. There is an anticipation that it will affect the overtime budget, some of those things, but this is an operational need to provide supervision for our staff in the facility without running our supervisors multiple 16-hour shifts a week.
Kathy, I would like also, one of the numbers is, I look at things in lump sums. I would like all the costs of the JDC in one number, and I'd like the average occupancy, if you will, or clients in that. And I'd be happy to see a chart that says in February, the average was X, and in March it was this or that, and that'll help me picture it out. Another way of doing that would be when a person is in juvenile detention, they typically begin at this time and they exit at this time. And that is a number of hours, so I could deal with the total number of hours that are toward the client, if you will, in the juvenile detention center. Now, that takes a little bit to crank the numbers, but I know you've got the data.
Okay,
I'll commit to work with George and see what we can put together.
Yeah, we can certainly, those numbers are easy to find in terms of the average population, average length of stay, if I'm hearing you correctly, Commissioner. But those numbers are misleading because if you have two youth, male and a female,
Yeah,
that will require two pots immediately.
if you,
So we have minimum posts that need to be filled. So more of the post situation and the staffing for operational needs than it is the actual number of youth in detention. So 2, 3 youth will make a difference.
there are always reasons why things cannot be presented, and that's why I take a look at it in the aggregate.
Sure.
And
Understood.
okay.
okay.
I don't know how you would like to head. We're infringing on the agenda review, I think. And we still have the jail to present, corrections to present their budget as one of the top 3 budgets in our general fund.
Yeah, well,
Do you want to?
the agenda this week isn't a lot.
Okay, okay,
So just go ahead and proceed.
okay. Then I'll ask Marin to come up and
If I might, Mr. Chairman, when I see a judge, I know their time can be constrained because they've got other obligations. Is this something we need to do right now, Judge?
Thank you. No, I'm fine. I'm waiting
Okay.
for someone else to show up, so we're good. Thank you, though. Oh, I guess she ordered. She snuck in. So ours is in an executive session.
We should probably take that because I know the judge has commitments and stuff like that. I'm sorry, Marin, but why don't we do that? So executive session for 15 minutes. Do we know the? Oh.
Why don't we go ahead and do Marin until everybody's there then?
Yeah, I don't know how fast Jessica will walk in. She might just.
Well, I can talk fast. Marin Fox, Director of Corrections. There are 3 separate budgets in the Corrections Department. We can start with the smallest first. That's the concessions budget, which, as you know, is the fund that.
it's in tab 12 of your notebooks.
Tab 12. Concessions is the fund that is supported by revenue that the county gets from the phone services and commissary services at the jail. Those are typically set aside for inmate-related items or inmate kind of benefit items. So we use that for trustee uniforms and things for work crew, things like that. That's a $500 decrease in expenditures. And in the revenue side, we're showing a $10,000 decrease in revenue. That's because the FCC is releasing different rules around the amount of commission that can be charged to friends and family to contact their loved ones in jail on the hold systems. Any questions on that one?
That's the page, Kathy, that's.
It's
what
got,
the
has a
tag-
little tab. It should have a tab that says concessions.
No wonder I'm not grokking it.
Yeah. And the tab is on the revenue details, which is green. And then the.
I have no questions. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It looks like Jessica's here. Did you want to go to the executive session?
So,
Oh.
just so that I understand
Sure.
this correctly, you're showing revenues of about $85,000 and expenditures of $18,000. this is-
87,900 on expenses.
So it's not pulling even.
It's not even, it's part of the general fund. So the general fund is supporting jail concessions. It's not a special revenue fund.
There was a time when it was required to be. It's no longer required to be, but jails typically kind of follow the spirit of that requirement, that the funds that are generated this way are spent towards inmate programs.
So fortunately, the contracts with the cities generate enough revenue to cover the shortfall in the concessions.
Right, yes. And we could make that even if if the board wishes to.
Okay. Offender services.
Okay, Jessica? We got an executive session you need to do? Yeah, I do. So
15 minutes.
15 minutes, and what do you want it under? Performance of a public employee, 15 minutes, executive session. Okay. We'll do that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, back from executive session, no decisions were rendered. Marin, thank you for letting us interrupt.
I guess you'll have to restate the jail numbers now because that was a half hour ago.
Start all over. Everyone's forgotten already. Marin Fox, I'm back, Director of Corrections. We covered concessions. I'd like to go to offender services next. I don't know where that tab is for you.
It's right next to concessions. So
No significant changes in that budget. It's a $182,000 reduction overall. That's mainly due to the position that was eliminated. The only significant increase is in extra help. That is because we're kind of back with work crew. So we're starting to see, we'll see that number go up. We're fully operating work crew again in custody and out of custody. And that's where we typically have used extra help in the past, but we weren't doing that for a few years because of COVID. Any questions on the expenditures?
I hadn't noticed the amount you get from the chairman's favorite state department. Ecology, $40,000 from ecology.
And that may be
What do
higher.
they do? Yeah.
Litter pickup. So it's our work crews going out and doing litter pickup, dump site cleanup, that sort of work.
And it's contracted by the ecology.
It's a grant with the Department of Ecology. We've had it for a very, very long time, and that number actually will likely be higher than 40,000. Right. Any other questions on offender services? All right, on to the jail. In the expenditures, it's a total increase of 671,000, which equates to about 5.5%. There are no significant changes. Most of the increases are just the general COLA type increases. There is a little bit of a significant increase in tuition and registration. That's largely due to increased costs from the Criminal Justice Training Commission for sending officers to the academy. We have a number of vacant positions, so we anticipate sending quite a few officers next year. Any questions on expenditures?
Just, so I should be looking at salaries and benefits primarily?
from 378,000 in 22 to 1.1 million in 23. So that's a pretty significant increase on their budget. All right.
Is there anything there that you would change?
Anyone?
It always, I get tired of hearing the argument that putting people in jail is too expensive, and so we ought to just let them out on the street. And I've never been fond of that particular argument, so I'm just grabbing at straws here and how to combat that argument.
Right. Well, the county we don't have booking restrictions at this point. So I think it's within the city's control. Each city can decide how many people they want to book and what charges they want to book on. We
Yeah,
take them all.
true
So,
enough.
but it is within their control.
Well,
They
of
want to
course,
make a change.
and the other strategy is making sure everybody gets out on bail. I think we have a presidential candidate who has a lot of experience in doing that. Ask her how that's working out in San Diego or San Francisco. I'm being snarky.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
That's all. We're pretty much status quo for
Yep.
our budgets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Kathy?
No, that's our budget workshop for today.
Okay, and I know we're running late, and I apologize for that. Before we head into the agenda, I had one miscellaneous item that's been bugging me all weekend, and I gotta bring it up. Is our conversation on private roads. You know, I've been working on that since I got here. I had people contact me on that before I even got here. And we've been basically almost 2 years into this thing. And we've had a group that's really worked out to try and make it easier for people to do things on their own property. And then we run into where we always hear, well, you're going to break laws, you're going to do this, and you're having exposure. You know, what we have is we have so many laws and rules and regulations that you can't free something up without breaking something. And it gets to the point where it feels like, oh yeah, we'll placate these people up to this point, and then we'll just throw the law thing at them. Oh, we'd like to do something for you, but we can't do anything because there's an RCW, there's something. Somebody might sue us. Somebody might sue us for anything. And I guess my point is, I'm not going to stop pushing on this. I think the people deserve more rights to do things with their stuff. And if we have to fight those battles, that's what we're here for. That's a battle I'm not afraid to fight. So I'm not going to be very acceptive of more restrictions on what this group came up with. And I had a conversation with Doug a little bit this morning, and they'll try and work around some of that and keep us compliant. Of course, they throw all the scary stuff. Well, you could lose your protection. The county wouldn't be able to protect you. Well, I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about the people out there having an ability to do things. I don't walk in fear. I don't worry about that kind of stuff. I worry about the lens I look through is giving these people some control back over their properties and their lives. And that's the only lens everything I look at, that's the lens it runs through. So it upset me a little bit, and I didn't say anything last Wednesday because I don't want to bite anybody's head off. But I thought about this, and I'm not going to stop pushing on this. And wherever it falls, but I'm not stopping.
I certainly would encourage you not to stop, but I know I was part of the other side that just said, you've got to be judicious of the battles you pick. And one of the sad lessons in life I've learned is that you may be totally correct and it will be used against you. And when that happens, in the particular case we were thinking about is actually pretty special, but concessions have a way of biting back in a system where you and I or the board aren't going to be the final arbiters. It's going to go to the judges. And we have Zippo control over that.
I get that.
Yep. So it's a judgment call
Yeah.
and not,
Anyway, I had to get that off my chest. So with that, we can head into an agenda for tomorrow. It looks pretty, the whole first part looks like we've done all the memorandum of understandings for the rescue plan, which I think we had to get in place. So I don't think there's anything special. I see Kaylee on there. I don't think there's any special here. We're just getting in compliance with getting these contracts ready, right?
Yes. Yep.
And there's no money left unallocated?
Oh, Commissioner Weber, don't get me excited like that. We do have an update scheduled with the board here in a couple of weeks that we'll be bringing to you guys after we file this next quarterly. We are getting close though. We are getting close. So yeah.
So I did want to share with my colleagues that I attended the exit interview with the state auditor's office. And I was particularly pleased to hear that the auditors talk about how great it was to work with Cowlitz County staff in terms of the collaboration, the cooperation, and the fact that there were virtually no findings and they were, we had addressed the things that they had raised in, last year, and it was a very good report. So Kaylee was mentioned particularly by name as being particularly helpful. So Kaylee, I want to say thank you again for that. And your boss is here, so she's got that message too. It's great when we're in a position with the complexities of public finance and the demands for transparency that we undergo the scrutiny of public audit, and we pass with flying colors. And I think, kudos to the staff down there for keeping all of us on track. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. It was a good year.
Carolyn, does this auditor is first on here, but I'm thinking it's all these MOUs, right? Okay. So then the other name I see is Public Works. I think you're the only motion item.
Good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. Yes, I am the only motion item. I guess I just want to be the spotlight this week. I do have one other consent agenda item buried in there for the change order number 2 for the pavement overlay project.
Oh, yeah.
It's our corrections for overruns, underruns. It's for a total of $9,000. We had several roads that had deeper ruts, so we ended up putting extra pavement out there to have a good structural statement. But this is the last change order for this project. It's for $9,000. It brings our new total to $2,231,410. So that is the one on the consent agenda. The other change order, yes.
Susan, do we get CRAB money for any of that restoration or repair?
Not directly. So what we do, we do get CRAB money and we have to report what we use it on. And so part of that CRAB money, the RATA, Rural Arterial Trust Accounts, that money that comes to us through one of those accounts is used towards our overlay project. And so when we're our annual reporting, they have fund and accounting where that money has gone to.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Anything else on overlay before I just start running like I was going? So the other project is our striping project. This is our first and final change order for the striping project. This year, we tried to cut down on some of our roads due to the budget, the way the the striping has gone in the past few years. And when we did that, we unfortunately cut a few roads that should not have been cut, like Cool Road and Mount Pleasant, where it's really dark, really foggy at night. So the stripes are hard to see. So this change order of $58,500 was requested to add roads back in, and they included places like Cool Road, Shirley Gordon, Holcomb, Mount Pleasant, and Columbia Heights. So these were roads we considered too dangerous not to have the stripe for the second year, an annual stripe. So we added them to the contract at the unit price.
Care of,
So on the Columbia Heights, is that North Columbia Heights where it's out rural?
Yes,
Rural?
it's the rural portion that is a county road. So Columbia Heights is City of Longview Street up until past that church that I can't remember. That's if you're heading out of Longview, there's a church on your left. Just beyond that is where it becomes, that area is where it becomes a county
Assemblies
road.
of God.
Is that
Assemblies
the
of
one?
God.
Yeah.
It's the big one.
So.
Okay, thank you.
okay,
Thank you.
paint's not cheap. I think that covered all the agenda items. Anything else for that? How about that, Jessica? Not at 11, we can move right into you.
Good morning, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have a few requests and then I have a couple additional executive sessions. First request comes from juvenile detention. They are requesting to reclassify a juvenile detention officer to a court liaison specialist, which is a 5% increase.
Okay.
Next item comes from Superior Court. They're requesting to reclassify one of their admin deputies to a lead admin deputy, which is also a 5% increase.
Okay.
And then the last request I have comes from Office of Public Defense. He's asking to reclassify his current attorney, Christopher Eastwood, to a senior attorney, which is a 5% increase.
Good.
Okay. And then I have two executive sessions, one for performance of a public employee and one for collective bargaining. And I would say 5 minutes each, so 10 minutes total.
Okay, so we'll go to executive session, performance of the employee and collective bargaining, 5 minutes each. Back from executive session. No decision is rendered. I'll turn it over to you.
Jessica Warren, Human Resources again. I have one final request for you. Comes from the auditor's office, and it's to reclassify the comptroller to salary grade 605, step 4, which is about a 5% increase.
That sounds like a good idea.
That's all I got.
Okay, anything else? Anything else, gentlemen? Wow. It was a slow start, but we made up time, didn't we? Okay, we'll adjourn. Thank you.